Hello everyone. Welcome to our channel. The Blackwood National Forest did not exist on the oldest maps. Early surveyors marked the land as empty, an unbroken wash of green ink stretching beyond the reach of rail lines and reason. Later cartographers gave it rivers, ridges, and a name. But the forest had never been empty. It had only been waiting. For generations, the Blackwood family has watched over those trees from a skeletal tower perched on Ironbark Ridge. Ranger Elias Blackwood climbs it every night, telling the town its habit, telling himself its vigilance. Because something in the forest does not like to be unwatched. When two hikers vanish without a trace, leaving behind only strange, elongated footprints and a silence that feels deliberate, Elias begins to recognize the signs. He has seen them before. The night his father disappeared. The forest is learning, mimicking, studying, and now it is calling his name. In Blackwood, the trees are not the only things rooted deep. The Blackwood National Forest did not appear on older maps. Not the early ones drawn by rail companies and surveyors with brass instruments and leather boots. Those maps showed empty land, unclaimed, unnamed, an unbroken sprawl of green ink. Later editions filled in rivers, ridges, and boundaries. They stamped it with a title, Blackwood National Forest. But locals knew better. The forest had never been empty. It had only been waiting. Ranger Elias Blackwood had grown up beneath its shadow. His earliest memories were of pine needles under his boots and the resin-sweet scent of sap drying on his hands. His father, Thomas Blackwood, had been head ranger before him, and his grandfather before that had been a volunteer fire lookout when the tower was first built in 1932. The watchtower stood on Ironbark Ridge, overlooking miles of dense forest canopy. From the ground, it looked skeletal and fragile, a wooden spine reaching above the trees. From the top, it felt like the last safe place in the world. Elias climbed it every night. He told the town it was habit. He told the sheriff it was nostalgia. He told himself it was vigilance. The truth was simpler. Something in the forest did not like to be unwatched. At 37, Elias carried himself with the quiet discipline of a man who trusted silence more than conversation. His beard was trimmed close, streaked faintly with premature gray. His hands were scarred from years of clearing brush and repairing fencing. His eyes, cold, steady, observant, missed very little. Except, perhaps, what moved when he blinked. The disappearances had started 3 weeks ago. Two college students from the city, Evan Merrill and Sophie Dunn, had signed into the Southern Trailhead Registry at 9:12 a.m. on a Friday. They were smiling in the photo snapped by another hiker, arms slung over each other's shoulders, unaware of the weight of the trees behind them. By Sunday evening, they were gone. Search parties combed the trails. Dogs traced scents to Miller's Creek, then lost them abruptly at the water's edge. Helicopters circled overhead. Volunteers marched in grids. They found the couple's campsite intact. Sleeping bags still laid out. Shoes placed neatly beside the tent. A half-eaten bag of marshmallows spilled into the dirt. No blood. No torn fabric. No drag marks. Just footprints. Bare footprints. Sheriff Dalton had called Elias personally. "You need to see this," he'd said. Elias knelt beside the prints in the mud. They were human in outline, but wrong. The toes were elongated, thin and tapered. The arch was too pronounced. The heel sank deeper than it should have, as though whatever made it carried its weight backward unnaturally. "They took their shoes off?" Dalton had asked. Elias didn't answer. Because he remembered those tracks. He had seen them once before. The night his father vanished. Elias lived alone now in the ranger cabin west of Ironbark Ridge. The structure was modest. 2 rooms, a small kitchen, a wood stove that ticked softly when it cooled at night. The walls were lined with shelves holding maps, radios, old reports, and his father's belongings. He kept the journal locked in a drawer. He had not opened it in years. The first time he heard the humming, he was halfway up the watchtower stairs. It was subtle, low, vibrating through the wood beneath his boots. He stopped climbing. The forest was dark below him. the canopy moving gently in a wind he could not feel at his height. The sky above was cloudless, the stars sharp as broken glass. The humming grew louder. Not louder in sound, but closer. Elias turned slowly, scanning the treetops. At first, he saw nothing. Then something shifted between branches. A pale shape. Too large for an owl. Too silent for a bear. It moved fluidly from one limb to the next, not shaking leaves, not snapping twigs. Just gliding. Elias's breath slowed. He did not call out. He did not reach for his rifle. He simply watched. The shape paused, and from somewhere deep in the forest, a voice drifted upward. Elias. It was soft, familiar. His father's voice. The sound struck him like a physical blow. Thomas Blackwood had been dead for 25 years. The search had lasted months. They found his rifle 20 yards from the cabin clearing. The first time he heard the humming, he was halfway up the watchtower stairs. It was subtle, low, vibrating through the wood beneath his boots. He stopped climbing. The forest was dark below him, the canopy moving gently in a wind he could not feel at his height. The sky above was cloudless, the stars sharp as broken glass. The humming grew louder. Not louder in sound, but closer. Elias turned slowly, scanning the treetops. At first, he saw nothing. Then something shifted between branches. A pale shape. Too large for an owl. Too silent for a bear. It moved fluidly from one limb to the next, not shaking leaves, not snapping twigs. Just gliding. Elias's breath slowed. He did not call out. He did not reach for his rifle. He simply watched. The shape paused, and from somewhere deep in the forest, a voice drifted upward. Elias. It was soft, familiar. His father's voice. The sound struck him like a physical blow. Thomas Blackwood had been dead for 25 years. The search had lasted months. They found his rifle 20 yards from the cabin clearing. They never found his body. Elias. The voice came again. Closer. Warmer. As if standing directly below the tower. He stepped to the railing and looked down. Nothing stood at the base. The clearing was empty. But the trees were full. Pale limbs threaded through the canopy like veins. Dozens. Watching. The humming stopped. The forest went silent. Elias raised the rifle slowly and aimed toward the densest cluster of movement. "I'm not 12 anymore," he said quietly. The branches trembled. And then, all at once, the shapes vanished deeper into the trees. Not down. Into the higher canopy where moonlight barely touched. Elias remained in the tower until dawn. The next morning, Sheriff Dalton arrived unannounced at the cabin. "You look like hell," Dalton said, stepping inside. "Didn't sleep." Dalton hesitated, then placed a folded photograph on the kitchen table. It showed a new set of prints near the eastern ridge. "They're elongated, fresh." "They're back," Dalton said. Elias stared at the image. "They never left." Dalton sighed. Search team found something else. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small digital recorder. "We found this hanging from a tree branch about 10 feet up." He pressed play. Static crackled. Then laughter. A woman's laughter. Sophie Dunn's laughter. It cut off abruptly, replaced by Evan Merrill's voice. "Help." Then overlapping whispers. Not two voices. Not three. Many. Repeating a single word. "Come." Dalton stopped the playback. "That's not possible," he muttered. Elias met his gaze. "They're learning." "Learning what?" "Us." Dalton didn't respond, but his hand trembled slightly as he pocketed the recorder. That night, Elias unlocked the drawer. He removed his father's journal. The leather cover felt brittle beneath his fingers. He opened to the first page he had once been too afraid to read. September 14th. Heard it in the trees again. Mimics birds poorly. Learning patterns. September 20th. Footprints near Miller's Creek. Not animal. Not man. Watching from above. October 3rd. It said my name tonight. Elias swallowed. He turned the page. October 17th. There is more than one. They move in groups. Communicate through vibration. The humming isn't sound. It's resonance. October 21st. They are patient. The final entry was written with heavy pressure, ink gouging the page. October 23rd. If you read this, Elias, do not answer them. Do not follow the voices. They want to understand us. They take us to study. I think they are building something. The entry ended mid-sentence. Elias closed the journal. The cabin creaked softly around him. Outside, the wind had died completely. No insects chirped. No owls called. The forest held its breath. Then, 3 knocks. Slow. Measured. On the cabin door. Elias stood frozen. Another knock. Then a voice. Sheriff Dalton's voice. Elias? You in there? Elias's heart pounded. Dalton had left hours ago, and the road to the cabin was gravel, loud, unmistakable. He had heard no vehicle. Elias, the voice called again. Open up. The tone was perfect, the cadence exact, but something beneath it vibrated wrong. Like a note slightly off-key, Elias stepped backward instead of forward. The doorknob began to turn. Slowly, deliberately. The hinges creaked as the door pushed inward an inch. Cold air slipped inside. Elias, it whispered. And above the cabin roof, something heavy shifted across the tin. Crawling, watching, waiting. Elias raised his rifle toward the widening crack of the door. And for the first time since he was 12 years old, he was afraid to look. The door did not slam open. That was what unsettled Elias most. It moved slowly, deliberately, like a guest testing whether it was welcome. The latch slid back with a dry click. The wood shifted inward an inch at a time, pushing against the weight of night air that pressed to get inside. Elias stood 5 steps back, rifle braced to his shoulder, breath shallow and controlled. He had learned long ago that panic made noise. Noise made mistakes. Elias. The voice was Sheriff Dalton's, steady, edged with impatience. "You gonna make me stand out here all night?" The tone was perfect. The rhythm flawless. But Elias could feel it in his bones. Something beneath the sound wasn't shaped right. Human voices carried breath and warmth. This one carried vibration. A faint hum threaded through each syllable, too subtle for anyone who didn't know what to listen for. Dalton hadn't driven up. Elias would have heard tires crunching gravel. The road to the cabin had no secrets. And yet, Elias. This time the voice shifted. Not abruptly. Not unnaturally. It melted into another. Softer. Older. His father's. The sound hollowed his chest. Thomas Blackwood had spoken that name with authority and quiet affection, like a man shaping his son into something strong. Hearing it now felt like reopening a grave that had never properly closed. The door pushed another inch. Moonlight slipped across the cabin floor, stretching thin and pale toward Elias's boots. "Son," the voice whispered. Elias did not lower the rifle. "You're not him," he said. Silence. The silence had weight. It filled the cabin like thick smoke. Then the laughter came. It wasn't loud. It wasn't wild. It was curious. As if something was pleased with a test result. "Correct," it said. The voice now held neither Dalton nor Thomas. It was layered, tones overlapping in faint discord, as though several throats were speaking in unison. The doorknob stopped turning. The door remained half open. Cold seeped in. Elias's eyes flicked upward as a soft scrape crossed the tin roof. The sound traveled slowly from one end of the cabin to the other, careful and balanced. Whatever moved up there knew how to distribute its weight. "You belong here," the layered voice said. "We remember you." A pulse of anger steadied him. "You took my father." A pause. "We kept him." The words landed like stones. Elias's grip tightened. Kept him where? The hum deepened slightly, resonating through the wood beams overhead. Above. The scrape on the roof shifted closer to the center. Elias's mind raced despite himself. His father's journal. The entries about resonance. About the canopy. About learning. "They don't hunt from the ground," he murmured to himself. "Ground is yours," the voice agreed gently. "Above is ours." The door moved another inch. A pale shape appeared in the gap, thin, jointed fingers curling around the edge of the frame. The skin looked stretched too tight over bone, almost translucent in the moonlight. Veins pulsed faintly beneath the surface. The fingers were too long. The knuckles bent backward slightly. Elias did not hesitate. He fired. The gunshot exploded inside the cabin, deafening and violent. The recoil slammed into his shoulder as splinters burst from the doorframe. A dark spray splattered across the wood and floor. The hand vanished. The door flew open fully now, not from force but from release. The threshold stood empty. Outside, the clearing was still. But above, movement. Several shapes shifted across the treetops in rapid, fluid arcs. Pale bodies weaving between branches without sound. And the humming swelled. Not loud. Not overwhelming. Just present. Like breath against the inside of his skull. "You learn faster than the others," the layered voice said from everywhere at once. Elias stepped forward, rifle sweeping the clearing. "Why come here?" he demanded. "Why show yourselves?" A flicker of pale movement at the tree line. Then stillness. "We test," the voice answered. "Test what?" "Resistance." The word vibrated through the beams of the cabin. Elias's eyes narrowed. "You don't take me because you can't." Silence again. Then, faintly, amusement. We could. The roof dented slightly as weight pressed down from above. But you watch. The pressure lifted. You are useful. A chill ran deeper than fear down Elias's spine. Useful. For what? The humming softened gradually, like a receding tide. The shapes above thinned and drifted backward into the canopy's shadows. Before the last pale limb vanished, the voice returned, singular now, almost gentle. Soon. Then the forest exhaled. Crickets resumed their rhythm. Wind moved lightly through leaves. The ordinary sounds returned as though nothing unnatural had occurred. Elias remained in the doorway long after the clearing emptied. He stepped forward carefully, scanning the ground. There were no footprints near the porch. None. He knelt anyway, brushing pine needles aside. Nothing. The only evidence of intrusion was the smear of dark fluid on the doorframe where his bullet had struck something. It glistened faintly in the moonlight, thick and slow to drip. Elias touched it with the tip of his finger. It was warm. Not pieces of themselves. Inside the cabin, the air still felt wrong, charged, as if a storm had passed through walls instead of sky. He closed and locked the door. Then he dragged the kitchen table in front of it. He checked the windows. Secured. He looked up at the ceiling. The tin roof no longer creaked. But he could not shake the feeling that something had memorized the shape of his cabin from above. He packed quickly. A second rifle from the closet. Extra ammunition. Flashlights. The old hunting knife his father had carried. And the journal. He hesitated over the journal only a moment before sliding it into his coat pocket. If they had kept his father, then whatever waited above the canopy might still hold answers. Or remains. The idea clawed at him. Dawn would come in a few hours. He would go to Dalton. This was no longer something he could shoulder alone. As he finished packing, a thought surfaced, sharp and unsettling. They hadn't tried to break in. They hadn't tried to overpower him. One section stood out, the western quadrant, beyond Ironbark Ridge. Thomas had drawn a crude symbol there, concentric arcs beneath a canopy sketch. Beside it, a single word: resonance. Elias unfolded the map completely and spread it across the desk. The hum from earlier echoed faintly in his memory. Not random. Not chaotic. Structured. If they communicated through vibration, if they resonated through the canopy like a web, then somewhere there had to be a center. A nexus. A place where the sound gathered strongest. Where they might take what they kept. The idea formed slowly but solidly. Find the source. Burn it. His father had never had that chance. Elias looked toward the ceiling again. You made a mistake, he said quietly. The cabin did not answer. You let me hear you. Outside, the wind shifted direction, and somewhere far beyond the ridge, too distant to pinpoint, there came the faintest tremor of humming. Not loud enough for most, but clear enough for him. They were still there, watching, waiting, and now, listening for what he would do next. Elias checked his rifle one more time and sat in the dark until dawn began to bleed into the trees. He would go into town. He would show Dalton the map. And then, he would climb higher than they ever expected. Because if the ground belonged to men and the canopy belonged to them, then Elias Blackwood would find a way to set the sky on fire. Elias left the cabin just as the first gray light filtered through the trees. The air felt heavier than it should have at dawn. Mist clung low to the ground like something reluctant to rise. He locked the door behind him out of habit rather than hope. If the canopy wanted inside, Wood would not stop it. The gravel crunched beneath his boots as he walked to his truck. He paused before opening the driver's side door. The forest was quiet, but not naturally so. Birdsong returned in thin, cautious bursts. No branches swayed above him. He looked up anyway. The canopy appeared ordinary. That frightened him more than movement would have. He climbed into the truck and started the engine. The radio crackled immediately with static. He adjusted the dial, searching for Dalton's frequency. Nothing but white noise answered him. The hum was buried inside it. He could feel it in the vibrations of the steering wheel. It was faint but steady. He pulled onto the narrow dirt road leading toward Ashford. The trees leaned inward as if listening. Every mile felt longer than it should have. He kept glancing in the rearview mirror. Nothing followed him on the road, but movement flickered high above the tree line. Shapes traveled parallel to him, keeping pace. They did not descend. They simply observed. He tightened his jaw and drove faster. The forest thinned near the town boundary. Sunlight grew stronger as he approached open land. The hum weakened. By the time he reached Main Street, it had faded completely. Ashford looked deceptively normal. A bakery opened its doors for the morning rush. A delivery truck idled near the diner. 2 children waited at the corner for the school bus. Their mother held both of their hands tightly. Elias parked outside the sheriff's station. Dalton stood waiting on the front steps. He looked like he hadn't slept. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. "You hear it too?" Elias asked before greeting him. Dalton didn't pretend ignorance. "Yeah," he admitted quietly. "It's in the wires." They went inside without another word. Deputy Harris watched them from behind the front desk. He looked pale. Lyle was absent. "Where's Lyle?" Elias asked. Dalton's jaw tightened. "Didn't show up this morning." Elias felt a cold weight settle in his chest. "His house." Dalton nodded once. "We're heading there next." Elias unfolded the old map on Dalton's desk. The red markings stood out sharply against faded paper. Dalton leaned closer. "This is your father's handwriting?" "Yes," Elias said. He marked places where the humming was strongest. Dalton traced a circle in the western quadrant. "This area here?" "Resonance," Elias replied. Dalton exhaled slowly. "That's deep forest." "Hardly any trails," Elias agreed. They both understood what that meant. Few witnesses. Few interruptions. A perfect place to build something hidden. Dalton folded the map carefully. "First we check on Lyle," he said. They drove to the deputy's house on the edge of town. The curtains were drawn. The yard was undisturbed. No signs of forced entry showed on the front door. Dalton knocked. No answer came. He knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. Elias circled the house slowly. He stopped beneath a maple tree in the backyard. His stomach dropped. The branches were stripped bare of leaves. Every single one. The bark was gouged with thin vertical lines. Claw marks. The grass below the tree was flattened. He looked up. Something hung 20 feet above ground. At first it looked like a bundle of fabric. Then it shifted. Elias stepped backward. "Dalton," he called sharply. The sheriff joined him. They both stared upward. Deputy Lyle's body was suspended between branches. It was not tied with rope. It was woven into the limbs themselves. Branches bent unnaturally around him. His arms hung limp at his sides. His face was pale. His eyes were open. Dalton swore under his breath. "Get him down," Elias said. Dalton hesitated. "You see any blood?" Elias looked again. There was none. No wounds. No tearing. Just stillness. As Dalton moved toward the tree, Lyle's mouth twitched. Both men froze. The deputy's lips parted slowly. A thin, rattling sound escaped his throat. Then a word formed. "Help." Dalton took a step forward instinctively. Elias grabbed his arm hard. "Don't," he warned. Lyle's head tilted slightly to the side. Too far. Too loose. The humming began faintly overhead. The branches trembled. Lyle's chest did not rise or fall. The voice came again. "Dalton." It sounded exactly like him. Dalton staggered backward. "That's not him," Elias said firmly. The woven branches tightened. Lyle's body lifted higher into the canopy. The tree seemed to swallow him. Leaves that had been stripped moments before appeared again as if grown instantly. Within seconds, the body was gone. The branches looked normal. The humming faded. Dalton stood trembling. "They're close," Elias said quietly. "They're getting bolder." Dalton nodded shakily. "We need state support." "They won't move fast enough," Elias replied. Dalton looked at him. "You still thinking about burning it?" Elias did not answer immediately. He stared at the tree. "They're organizing," he said instead. Dalton swallowed. "Organizing how?" "They're taking positions closer to town." Dalton rubbed his face. "Then we hit the resonance point first." Elias met his gaze. "You believe me now?" Dalton let out a hollow laugh. "I just watched a tree eat my deputy. That was answer enough." They returned to the station quickly. Dalton called an emergency meeting with the remaining deputies. Elias laid the map out again. "This is where we go," he said. Harris stared at the circled quadrant. "You're serious?" "Yes," Elias replied. Harris looked terrified. "So what's the plan?" Elias tapped the word written in red. "Resonance." He looked each man in the eye. "If we can disrupt their communication, we weaken them." Dalton crossed his arms. "How?" Elias thought of the hum. "Sound," he said slowly. "Fire disrupts it. So does vibration." Harris frowned. "You're saying we fight sound with sound?" "In a way," Elias answered. Dalton nodded once. "Then we go loud." They gathered what equipment they had. Fuel cans, portable generators, old logging explosives from the county storage shed. The sun climbed higher as they loaded the trucks. Elias felt the hum return faintly in the distance. It pulsed once, twice, as if aware of their preparation. He glanced toward the western forest. The canopy shimmered slightly in the heat. It looked peaceful. It was anything but. Dalton shut the tailgate with a heavy clang. "Ready?" he asked. Elias nodded. "No more waiting," he said. They climbed into their vehicles. Engines roared to life. The convoy rolled toward Ironbark Ridge. As they crossed into forest shade, the humming grew stronger. It vibrated in the dashboard. It thrummed in Elias's teeth. He did not turn back. Because somewhere ahead, beyond the marked circle on his father's map, something was building. And if they did not reach it first, Ashford would not survive the next night. The convoy moved slowly once they left the main logging road. The forest swallowed the sound of their engines within minutes. Branches arched overhead, knitting together into a dim ceiling of green and shadow. The humming intensified as they drove deeper. It vibrated through the metal frames of the trucks. Elias felt it in his jaw and behind his eyes. Dalton drove ahead in the lead vehicle. Harris followed close behind Elias. No one spoke over the radios. The static was too thick to be useful. The road narrowed into little more than twin dirt ruts. Eventually Dalton raised a hand out his window and signaled to stop. The engines cut one by one. Silence rushed in immediately. It was not natural silence. It felt occupied. Elias stepped out of his truck and scanned the treetops. The canopy looked denser here. The light barely touched the forest floor. The air smelled damp and metallic. Harris unloaded a generator from the truck bed. Another deputy carried fuel cans carefully. Dalton joined Elias at the front. He asked if this was close to the marked spot. Elias unfolded the old map and checked their bearings. He nodded once. They were less than half a mile from the resonance circle. The humming pulsed again, stronger than before. It rolled through the trunks like distant thunder. Leaves shivered overhead though no wind blew. Elias motioned for the group to proceed on foot. They moved in a tight line through thick undergrowth. Twigs snapped beneath boots. Every sound felt amplified. The deeper they walked, the less wildlife they saw. No birds perched in branches. No insects chirped from the brush. The forest felt abandoned by everything except the hum. After 10 minutes they reached a clearing. Elias stopped abruptly at its edge. The ground inside was stripped bare of grass. The soil had been packed flat and smooth. The trees around the clearing leaned inward unnaturally. Their branches intertwined high above, forming a dome. Dalton stepped beside Elias and stared upward. Something hung in the center of the dome. It resembled a massive woven nest. Branches, vines, and splintered wood were braided together tightly. Dark shapes were embedded within it. Harris whispered that it looked like a hive. Elias felt his stomach tighten. The humming was loudest here. It vibrated visibly through the woven structure. The nest pulsed faintly with each wave of sound. Dalton asked what they were looking at. Elias answered that this was the resonance point. One of the deputies pointed upward suddenly. Pale limbs moved along the inner canopy. Dozens of them shifted in slow, deliberate patterns. The creatures clung upside down to branches like elongated spiders. Their skin reflected faint gray light. Their heads turned in unison toward the men below. The humming rose in pitch. Harris raised his rifle nervously. Elias signaled him to hold fire. The woven nest twitched slightly. A thin shape descended slowly from its underside. It hung by its legs at first. Then it lowered itself until its face was visible. Its features were nearly human, too smooth and too symmetrical. Its eyes were wide and reflective. Its mouth curved slightly upward. When it spoke, the voice layered multiple tones together. It welcomed them calmly. Dalton cursed under his breath. Elias stepped forward despite himself. He demanded to know what they had built. The creature tilted its head. It said they were preserving what they learned. The nest shifted again. A shape within it moved weakly. Elias realized with horror that the dark shapes embedded in the weave were human bodies. Some were skeletal. Some appeared fresher. Dalton whispered that they were too late. The humming surged as if in warning. The creature spoke again and said they would join soon. Elias shouted to set up the generators. Harris and the others scrambled into action. Fuel cans were opened quickly. Cords were dragged across the clearing. The creature above did not move to stop them. Instead it watched curiously. The generators roared to life one by one. The sound shattered the humming momentarily. The vibration shifted unevenly. The nest trembled violently. Pale limbs tightened on branches overhead. Several creatures hissed sharply. Elias grabbed a fuel can and doused the outer ring of the clearing. Dalton did the same on the opposite side. The air filled with gasoline fumes. The creature's smile faded. The layered voice warned them to stop. Elias struck a flare and threw it. Flames erupted instantly along the soaked perimeter. Fire raced across dry soil and climbed the nearest trunks. The humming became chaotic and fractured. The woven nest convulsed violently. Embedded bodies shook within its structure. Several creatures dropped from the canopy. They landed unnaturally upright despite the height. Harris fired at the nearest one. The bullet struck its shoulder and black fluid sprayed outward. The creature barely reacted. It lunged forward with terrifying speed. Dalton fired twice into its chest. It collapsed twitching but did not bleed normally. Flames climbed higher into the dome of branches. Smoke filled the clearing. The generators roared at full volume. The overlapping vibrations created a dissonant thunder. The nest began to tear apart under the strain. Bodies fell from above into the flames below. Elias forced himself not to look at their faces. More creatures descended, shrieking in layered tones. One leapt toward Harris and knocked him backward. Elias swung his rifle like a club and struck it across the skull. Its head snapped sideways with a cracking sound. Black fluid splattered across his coat. Dalton dragged Harris clear of snapping jaws. Another creature lunged through smoke toward Elias. He fired at point-blank range into its face. The impact blew part of its skull open. It collapsed at his feet, twitching violently. The fire intensified rapidly. Branches snapped and fell in burning arcs. The nest sagged and split down the center. The humming broke into broken fragments of vibration. Elias grabbed the last fuel can and hurled it into the base of the nest. It exploded in a burst of orange heat. The entire dome ignited. A deafening roar filled the clearing. The generators sputtered under falling debris but continued running. Dalton shouted that they needed to fall back. Harris stumbled to his feet with assistance. The surviving deputies retreated toward the trucks. Elias remained a moment longer. Through smoke and flame he saw one final creature clinging to a high branch. It stared down at him silently. Its expression was no longer curious. It was furious. The layered voice spoke one last time. It promised this was not the whole of them. Elias raised his rifle and fired into the branch. The creature vanished into smoke as the limb snapped. Heat forced him backward at last. He turned and ran toward the others. They reached the vehicles just as flaming debris rained down. The clearing roared like a furnace behind them. Dalton started the engine and shouted to move. The convoy pulled away through thick smoke. In the rearview mirror, Elias watched the canopy burn. The humming faded into chaotic silence. Yet even as flames consumed the resonance point, he felt something else. A faint vibration remained beyond the fire line. It was weaker but still present. He realized with dread that the network extended farther than this single nest. The western canopy was only one heart of many. Ashford might have won a battle. But the forest was vast and patient. And somewhere beyond the burning ridge, other voices were already beginning to learn his name again. Smoke followed them for miles. It rolled through the trees in thick gray waves. Ash drifted across the road like slow falling snow. The convoy did not stop until the forest thinned near Ironbark Ridge. Dalton killed the engine first. One by one the others followed. No one spoke immediately. They simply listened. The humming was gone. In its place remained a hollow ringing in their ears. Harris leaned against his truck and vomited into the dirt. Another deputy sat on the tailgate with shaking hands. Elias stared back toward the rising column of smoke. The western canopy burned fiercely. Flames licked high above the treetops. Black clouds climbed into the sky. For the first time in weeks, the forest sounded ordinary. Wind moved freely through branches. Distant birds cried out in confusion. Dalton stepped beside Elias. He asked if it was over. Elias did not answer right away. He focused on what he felt rather than what he saw. The vibration was weaker, but it was not absent. Something faint pulsed beneath the quiet. He told Dalton that they had damaged it. Dalton pressed for clarity. Elias admitted they had not destroyed everything. Harris wiped his mouth and joined them. He asked how many more nests there could be. Elias said he did not know. The map had only marked the strongest resonance point. That did not mean it was the only one. The smoke thickened briefly as wind shifted. A loud crack echoed from deep within the burning quadrant. A tree collapsed in a burst of sparks. Dalton radioed the station. Static answered at first. Then a faint voice broke through. The dispatcher reported that power lines were down in 2 places. Streetlights flickered erratically across town. Elias closed his eyes. The network had reacted. Disruption spread through its system. Dalton asked if they should return immediately. Elias nodded. The convoy turned back toward Ashford. The drive felt shorter this time. Smoke thinned as they left the ridge behind. Yet Elias felt watched again. Not from above. From far beyond the burn line. The town appeared through haze as they arrived. Several residents stood outside staring at the distant smoke column. Parents gathered children indoors quickly. Dalton parked in front of the station. Elias stepped out and scanned the sky. Clouds rolled in unnaturally fast from the west. The air carried a bitter metallic scent. Inside the station the lights flickered. The dispatcher looked pale and frightened. She said the phones had been ringing without callers. Voices whispered through empty lines. Elias felt anger rise in his chest. The creatures were adapting already. Dalton asked about any new disappearances. None had been reported yet. That word "yet" lingered heavily. Harris reported minor injuries from the fight. No one had been taken during the assault. That felt like a small miracle. Elias spread the map out again on the main table. He stared at the unmarked areas of forest. The red circle they burned looked insignificant now. He realized the forest was far larger than any map suggested. Resonance could travel miles through canopy. Destroying one nest disrupted structure but not memory. Dalton leaned over his shoulder. He asked what Elias was thinking. Elias said they had cut off a limb. He feared the body remained intact. Outside, thunder rumbled faintly. Clouds thickened overhead. Ash began to fall lightly onto Main Street. It coated parked cars in gray dust. A child pointed upward at drifting flakes. His mother pulled him inside quickly. The lights in the station flickered harder. The hum returned faintly through the wiring. Everyone froze at once. The vibration was softer than before. But it was deliberate. Dalton whispered that it was impossible. Elias shook his head. It was injured, not dead. A radio on the desk crackled unexpectedly. A voice emerged through static. It sounded distorted but recognizable. It spoke Elias's name slowly. The dispatcher covered her mouth in fear. Dalton reached to shut the radio off. The power cut out entirely before he touched it. Darkness filled the station. Only dim daylight filtered through windows. The humming grew slightly louder. It no longer felt centralized. It felt scattered. Fragments searching for alignment. Elias stepped toward the door. He told Dalton they needed to check the outskirts. If smaller nests existed closer to town, they would activate now. Dalton grabbed a flashlight and followed. They stepped back outside. The sky had darkened prematurely. Wind picked up sharply from the west. Ash swirled in spirals along the pavement. A loud cracking sound echoed from the tree line near the schoolyard. Elias's pulse quickened. He pointed toward the sound. Dalton shouted for Harris to bring rifles. They ran toward the edge of town. Residents peered from windows anxiously. Another crack split the air. A tall pine near the school bent violently. Its trunk twisted unnaturally. The ground beneath it shifted slightly. Elias slowed abruptly. He realized the movement was not wind. The roots were pulling inward. Dalton stared in disbelief. The soil sank slightly around the base. A section of earth collapsed downward. A cavity opened beneath the tree. Darkness yawned below. The humming surged from the hole. It was weaker than the nest they burned. But it was present. Harris arrived breathless beside them. He saw the cavity and swore. Elias stepped closer cautiously. The interior walls were lined with woven roots. Fragments of bone were embedded within them. Smaller than before. Child-sized. Rage tightened Elias's chest. Dalton muttered that it had been under them all along. The hum shifted pitch suddenly. Several pale shapes emerged from the hole. They were thinner than the ones at the ridge. Less developed. But their eyes reflected the same cold intelligence. One of them opened its mouth. Multiple voices layered together spoke again. They said the network endured. Harris fired immediately. The bullet tore through one creature's chest. It collapsed but did not die instantly. Another leapt toward Dalton. Elias tackled it midair. They hit the pavement hard. The creature's limbs wrapped around him. Its skin felt icy and tight. It tried to speak into his ear. He slammed the butt of his rifle into its jaw repeatedly. Black fluid splashed across the street. Dalton fired into its spine at close range. It went limp at last. More shapes crawled from the cavity. Not many, but enough to overwhelm if left unchecked. Elias shouted to pour fuel into the hole. Harris obeyed without hesitation. Gasoline splashed across roots and bone. Flames roared upward violently. The creatures shrieked in layered agony. The cavity ignited like a furnace. Fire consumed the woven roots rapidly. The humming fractured again into broken pulses. Elias stepped back, shielding his face from heat. The ground collapsed further inward as flames ate through structure. Within minutes, the hole caved in completely. Only smoldering earth remained. Silence returned gradually. No hum vibrated through wires. No movement stirred the trees nearby. Dalton breathed heavily beside him. He asked how many more might lie beneath Ashford. Elias did not answer, because he did not know. He only knew that the forest had grown bold enough to root itself under town soil. Smoke drifted lazily upward from the collapsed ground. The sky began to clear slightly overhead. For the moment the hum was gone again. But Elias understood something new. They were no longer just creatures of the canopy. They were adapting to earth and structure. If the forest could not reach down fast enough, it would grow upward from beneath their feet. Night fell heavy over Ashford. No one trusted the dark anymore. Generators hummed along Main Street as backup power replaced the damaged grid. The sound comforted some of the townspeople. To Elias it sounded like bait. He stood outside the sheriff's station watching smoke drift from the western horizon. The ridge still smoldered faintly. The wind had shifted north. That worried him more than the fire. Dalton joined him with 2 cups of black coffee. He handed one over without speaking. Elias took it but did not drink. He was listening. The hum had faded since they burned the second nest. But silence did not mean safety. Silence meant recalculation. Harris walked out of the station, adjusting the strap on his rifle. He said volunteers were forming patrol groups. Dalton told him to keep them close to town limits. No one was to enter heavy tree cover. Not after sunset. Especially not after sunset. Elias unfolded the old map again on the hood of Dalton's cruiser. He stared at the empty spaces. There were too many of them. Too many miles of uncut forest. Too many places resonance could travel undetected. Dalton asked what he was looking for. Elias said patterns. The western nest had been strong. The cavity under town had been smaller. Like an outpost. That meant there was structure. Hierarchy, perhaps. Or stages of growth. Dalton did not like the sound of that. Elias did not either. A sudden tremor passed under their boots. It was faint. Barely noticeable. But Elias felt it clearly. Dalton looked down at the pavement. Harris froze mid-step. Another tremor followed. Stronger. A low vibration rolled beneath the street. Not from wires this time. From earth. Elias turned slowly toward the north end of town. The old lumber mill stood there. Closed for years. Its foundation had sunk slightly over time. The vibration seemed to radiate from that direction. Dalton swore under his breath. He shouted for everyone to move. They ran toward the mill as more deputies joined them. Town residents watched from windows again. The ground trembled harder now. Loose gravel danced across the pavement. A deep cracking noise split the night air. The side of the mill buckled outward. Boards snapped free and crashed down. Dust exploded into the street. Elias reached the edge of the property and stopped. The earth beneath the mill was collapsing inward. The entire building tilted slightly. The hum returned suddenly. It rose from underground in layered waves. Not as strong as the ridge nest, but broader, wider. The foundation caved in fully. The mill sank several feet. Darkness yawned where solid ground had been. The vibration intensified until Elias's teeth rattled. Dalton shouted to fall back. But Elias moved forward instead. He reached the lip of the collapse and looked down. A massive hollow stretched beneath the mill. Roots interwove along its walls like arteries. Pale shapes clung to them in clusters. Dozens. More than they had seen before. The creatures were smaller. Thinner. But numerous. Their heads turned upward in unison. The layered voice rose from the pit. It spoke not one name but many. Voices of townspeople echoed together. Children. Parents. Friends. It was not imitation now. It was memory. Dalton pulled Elias back from the edge. The creatures began climbing. Not leaping from trees. Crawling up earthen walls. Harris fired into the pit. Bullets struck several bodies. More kept rising. Elias shouted for explosives. One deputy ran to retrieve the logging charges from the truck. The hum surged violently. Several creatures reached street level. They moved differently than before. Less fluid. More desperate. One lunged toward Harris. Dalton shot it through the throat. Black fluid sprayed across cracked pavement. Another reached for Elias. Its fingers brushed his coat. He felt a sharp, cold burn. He slammed the rifle but into its skull and shoved it back. The deputy returned with explosives in shaking hands. Elias grabbed the bundle. He told Dalton to cover him. Dalton nodded grimly. Gunfire echoed as creatures swarmed upward. Elias sprinted to the edge and hurled the explosives into the hollow. He dove backward just as Dalton fired into the detonator. The blast shook the entire block. Flames erupted from beneath the mill. Wood beams snapped and collapsed inward. The pit roared with fire. Creatures shrieked in layered agony again. The vibration shattered into chaotic pulses. Smoke poured skyward in thick columns. Debris rained down across the street. Elias forced himself to stand. The pit continued collapsing inward. Roots burned rapidly. Bodies fell back into flame. Within minutes, the entire hollow caved in fully. Only a massive crater remained. Flames licked its edges. The hum weakened to a faint trembling, then faded completely. Silence settled over the north end of town. Dalton lowered his rifle slowly. Harris stared into the smoking crater. He asked how something that large had grown unnoticed. Elias answered that it had been patient, growing beneath noise and traffic, feeding quietly. Dalton wiped ash from his face. He asked if this was the last of them under town. Elias did not lie. He said he did not know, because the forest had proven something tonight. It could adapt. It could split. It could root beneath buildings. And it could rebuild faster than expected. Wind swept across the crater carrying sparks upward. Elias watched them drift. For a moment the air felt still. Truly still. No vibration. No hum. Just the crackle of fire. Dalton placed a hand on his shoulder. He said they had held the line tonight. Elias nodded slowly. But he knew holding was not enough. They needed to understand it. Not just burn it. Because every time they destroyed a nest, the creatures responded differently. Less predictable. More aggressive. He looked toward the untouched forest beyond town limits. Dark shapes of trees stood silent against the night sky. The canopy looked calm again. Too calm. Elias felt something then. Not vibration. Not sound. A pause. As if the network had withdrawn its awareness briefly. He realized with dread what that meant. It was not gone. It was listening more carefully. Learning from each encounter. Ashford had survived another night. But the war had shifted underground. And somewhere beyond the last ring of firelight, beyond the burn scars and the craters, the forest was thinking. Morning did not bring comfort. It brought exposure. Smoke hung low over Ashford like a second ceiling. The crater at the old mill still smoldered. Fire crews stood at a distance, unsure what they were extinguishing. No one wanted to get too close to the edges. Elias had not slept. He stood at the rim of the collapse as sunlight crept over the rooftops. The pit looked like a wound in the earth. Blackened roots jutted from the sides like broken bones. Dalton joined him quietly. Reporters had begun gathering at the southern entrance to town. State officials were on their way. Elias did not care about statements or explanations. He cared about patterns. The humming had stopped entirely. Not faded. Stopped. That frightened him more than any noise. Dalton said the seismograph at the county office showed no underground movement. No vibration at all. It was as if the forest had gone deaf. Or mute. Harris approached with a folded sheet of paper. He said something else had happened overnight. 3 houses near the eastern edge reported dead trees in their yards. Not fallen. Dead. Leaves blackened instantly. Sap turned dark and thick. Elias felt a tightening in his chest. He asked how many houses. Harris said 5 in total, all in a loose line along the eastern boundary. Dalton looked toward that side of town. The eastern boundary faced unburned forest. Elias understood immediately. It was retreating, not outward, sideways, spreading differently. He asked Harris if any soil samples were taken from those yards. Harris said no one had touched them yet. Elias told him not to. Not until he saw them himself. They drove to the first house together. The tree in the yard stood upright but lifeless. Its bark had split in long vertical seams. Dark resin oozed slowly from the cracks. Elias knelt and pressed his palm to the trunk. It was cold. Too cold for morning air. He felt no vibration. Only stillness. Dalton asked what it meant. Elias said it was migrating. Not as creatures in branches, but through roots. The network had gone subterranean, using soil instead of canopy. Harris swallowed hard. He asked if burning would stop that too. Elias said fire might slow it, but roots ran deep, deeper than flames could reach easily. A second house showed the same signs. Dead tree, split bark, dark resin. The pattern formed a subtle arc across town's edge. Not random, directed. Dalton rubbed his face and said it was surrounding them. Elias nodded slowly. But it was not a siege. It was repositioning. He realized something else then. The creatures they fought were only surface expressions. Extensions of something older. Something that did not need eyes or limbs to survive. The humming had been communication. But beneath that was structure, an intelligence embedded in the forest itself. Dalton asked what they were dealing with. Elias answered carefully. Not animals. Not exactly. Not a colony in the simple sense. More like a distributed organism. A mind spread across miles of root and branch. Harris asked how to kill something like that. Elias did not answer. Because he did not know. They returned to the station for a meeting with state officials. Men in clean uniforms spoke of quarantines and evacuations. They wanted to clear Ashford temporarily. Elias listened without expression. Evacuation might save lives short-term, but abandoning town would leave the forest unchecked. Dalton asked Elias directly what he recommended. Elias said containment would not work alone. They needed disruption at scale. Not just fire. Resonance. Dalton raised an eyebrow. Elias explained his theory. The network communicated through vibration. Destroying nests fractured coordination. But the core intelligence remained intact. If they could generate sustained disruptive frequency across a wide band, they might scramble its structure. One official asked how. Elias looked toward the mountains beyond town. Old mining tunnels riddled those slopes. Deep shafts carved decades ago. He said they could use the tunnels as resonance chambers. Amplify explosive charges underground. Send shock waves through the root systems. Dalton stared at him carefully. It would be risky. The officials hesitated. But they had seen the crater. They had seen the footage from the ridge. Skepticism had died with Deputy Lyle. They agreed to assist. By late afternoon, equipment was being moved toward the northern hills. Elias stood alone briefly outside the station. The sky looked clear now. Too clear. He closed his eyes and listened. Still nothing. No hum. No tremor. Just wind. That silence pressed harder than noise ever had. Dalton approached and asked if he thought it was afraid. Elias said no. It was adapting again. Silence was camouflage. The mining tunnels loomed dark and abandoned by dusk. Rusting rails ran into black openings in the mountainside. State crews wired charges deep within the shafts. Generators and seismic monitors lined the entrance. Elias walked into one tunnel with Dalton at his side. The air inside was damp and cool. Water dripped from stone in steady rhythm. He placed his palm against the rock wall. For a moment he felt nothing. Then faintly, very faintly, a pulse. Dalton felt it too. They exchanged a look. It had followed them here. Roots could travel beneath rock fractures. The network was wider than forest soil. It threaded through mountain veins. Elias stepped back out into open air. He told the crews to prepare for detonation. Dalton stood beside him as the countdown began. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The mountainside erupted with a deafening roar. The ground shook violently beneath Ashford miles away. Dust burst from tunnel entrances. Shockwaves rippled through rock and soil alike. Elias felt the vibration roll outward like thunder underground. He waited. Silence followed. Then a distant cracking echoed from forest edges. Trees swayed violently without wind. Birds exploded into the sky in startled flocks. Dalton looked toward town anxiously. Reports crackled over radio lines. No structural damage reported, but tremors had been felt everywhere. Elias closed his eyes again. For several long seconds there was nothing. Then, a sound. Not humming. Not vibration. A long, low moan carried faintly from the forest. Not from one direction. From many. It rose and faded like a dying breath. Harris whispered that it sounded wounded. Elias did not speak. He was listening for what came after. The moan faded fully. Wind resumed through branches. Leaves rustled naturally again. Stillness followed. A different stillness than before. Not calculated. Not listening. Empty. Dalton asked if it worked. Elias stared at the dark tree line. He felt no pulse beneath his boots. No vibration in his bones. He nodded slowly. For now. But forests grow back. Roots regrow. And minds that learn do not forget easily. Night settled once more over Ashford. This time without hum. Without tremor. Without voices in wires. Elias remained awake long after others slept. He stood at the edge of town watching the trees. The canopy no longer shimmered with hidden movement. But he knew patience could last decades. And somewhere deep beneath scorched earth and shattered rock, if even one thread of that network survived, it would begin again quietly, learning the silence. Weeks passed without incident. Ashford tried to breathe normally again. Crews filled the crater at the old mill with gravel and concrete. The burned western ridge cooled into a scar of blackened trunks. State officials reduced their presence gradually. Reporters lost interest when nothing new happened. Children returned to school. Stores reopened fully. Electric lines were repaired. The generators were taken away. Life began stitching itself back together. Elias did not trust it. Silence had weight. He felt it pressing under every ordinary sound. Dalton resumed routine patrols. Harris joked again at the station desk. People smiled more easily. But no one walked near the forest alone. Not anymore. Elias spent his days inspecting tree lines personally. He checked bark for splits. He tested soil for unusual cold. He listened at night from the old watchtower again. The humming had not returned. Not once. The sky above the canopy looked clear and harmless. Yet Elias kept climbing. Because absence did not equal death. One morning a forestry biologist arrived from the State University. Her name was Dr. Mira Kessler. She carried soil samples collected after the mountain detonations. She requested to speak with Elias privately. They met inside the ranger cabin. She spread several sealed containers on the table. She said the samples were abnormal. Root systems in multiple areas showed synchronized die-off, as if a central signal had ceased. But beneath the dead roots, new filaments were forming. Thinner, deeper, more widely spaced. Elias felt his stomach tighten. He asked how deep. She said deeper than typical tree roots should reach. Far below frost lines. far below nutrient layers. Almost probing. He asked if they were spreading outward. She nodded slowly. In multiple directions at once. He looked at the map again. The red circle of the burned resonance point felt small. The mining tunnels felt small. The organism had not simply regrown. It had changed strategy. Dr. Kessler asked what he believed it was. He answered honestly. A network intelligence embedded in forest biology. Not a parasite. Not a fungus. Something older. She did not laugh. She said the cellular structures did not match known species. Dalton joined them shortly after. He listened carefully. He asked the question they both feared. Could it leave the forest entirely? Dr. Kessler hesitated. She said roots could follow moisture. Moisture followed rivers. Rivers ran beyond Ashford. Silence filled the cabin. Elias walked outside and stared toward the northern river valley. The water shimmered peacefully in late afternoon light. He imagined thin filaments creeping beneath its banks, spreading downstream mile by mile. Dalton stepped beside him. He asked what they should do now. Elias said they needed to monitor water tables, install vibration sensors beyond town limits, track anomalies early, contain growth before it organized. Dalton agreed reluctantly. The next month became one of preparation rather than reaction. Seismic sensors were buried along forest edges. Water samples were tested weekly. Ashford became a town built on detection. Most residents accepted the caution. Some resented it quietly. Time dulled fear. Elias did not allow it to dull vigilance. One night, nearly 3 months after the detonations, he climbed the watchtower alone again. The sky was overcast. Wind moved steadily across the canopy. He leaned on the railing and listened. Nothing. Only wind. He closed his eyes. He remembered the layered voices. The hum vibrating through bone. The nest burning in the clearing. The crater swallowing the mill. He breathed slowly. Still nothing. Then faintly. Not vibration. Not humming. A different sensation. A pattern in the wind. It rose and fell in uneven rhythm. He opened his eyes sharply. The trees below did not sway uniformly. A narrow line of movement rippled across them, traveling west to east. Too organized for wind. Too narrow for weather. His pulse quickened. He climbed down quickly and radioed Dalton. Dalton answered groggily. Elias told him to check the river sensors immediately. Minutes later, Dalton called back. One sensor near the north bend registered micro-tremors. Small but rhythmic. Elias felt cold certainty settle over him. It had not died. It had tunneled. He drove to the river with Dalton meeting him there. The water looked calm under dim starlight. Elias knelt near the bank and pressed his palm to damp soil. For a long moment he felt nothing. Then faintly, a pulse. Not as strong as before, but deliberate. Dalton cursed softly. The pattern moved under the riverbed, following water flow, heading outward from Ashford. Elias realized the detonations had forced retreat. But retreat had become expansion. It was escaping containment. Dr. Kessler arrived shortly after with portable equipment. She placed a probe deep into the mud. Readings confirmed movement. Filaments branching in complex geometry. Not chaotic. Strategic. Elias stood and looked downstream. Beyond Ashford lay farmland. Beyond farmland lay another town. If the network reached irrigation channels, it could route unnoticed for years. Dalton asked if more detonations would stop it. Elias shook his head slowly. Blasting every mile of riverbank was impossible. The network would simply adapt again. Dr. Kessler asked if communication was still disrupted. Elias listened carefully. No hum. No layered voice. The network was silent, but moving. He realized something then. The hum had been coordination. Without it, the organism was decentralized. Fragments acting independently. Harder to detect. Harder to kill. He felt a new kind of dread. Silence was evolution. Dalton asked what the next move was. Elias stared into the dark water. He said they needed to understand it. Not just fight it. Study its structure. Find its origin. Because something like this did not appear suddenly. It must have begun somewhere specific. A seed. A core. If they could find that origin, they might end it completely. Dr. Kessler nodded slowly. She said the oldest untouched section of forest lay beyond the northern ridge. Older than recorded settlement. Untouched by logging. Untouched by mining. Elias felt certainty. The origin would be there, where the forest had never been broken. Dalton looked uneasy. That area was remote. No roads reached it. Few maps detailed it. Elias said that was precisely why it mattered. They had burned nests, collapsed tunnels, blasted mountains, but they had never gone to the beginning. The root memory remained intact. He looked at Dalton steadily. He said it was time to go deeper than ever before. Not to burn, not to blast, but to find the heart. Because if the heart still beat quietly in ancient soil, the forest would never truly be silent. They left before dawn 2 days later. No convoy this time. No sirens. No heavy machinery. Just Elias, Dalton, Harris, and Dr. Mira Kessler. For people moving toward the oldest part of Blackwood Forest, they traveled light but armed. Rifles, sidearms, field packs, seismic scanners, soil probes. The northern ridge rose gradually before them. Beyond it lay land untouched by logging companies or survey crews. Even satellite mapping of that region was incomplete. Cloud cover lingered strangely over it more often than not. Elias had only been there once as a teenager. His father had taken him, not to explore, to warn. He remembered Thomas standing still beneath massive trees, listening longer than speaking, saying the forest felt different there. Older, aware. The hike was steep. Underbrush thickened with each mile. The air grew cooler despite climbing elevation. No birds followed them here. No distant highway noise reached this far. Even the wind seemed muted. Dr. Kessler stopped twice to check soil. The readings showed denser root systems, interwoven in unnatural symmetry. Harris muttered that it felt like walking across veins. Elias did not disagree. By mid-afternoon they crossed the ridge line. What lay beyond looked like another world. Trees towered higher than any in the southern forest. Trunks as wide as small rooms. Moss draped in heavy curtains from branches. Light barely pierced the canopy. The ground felt springy underfoot, almost breathing. Dalton glanced at Elias quietly. He felt it too. The silence here was not empty. It was watchful. They moved slowly through the old growth. No tremors registered on handheld scanners. No vibration traveled through the soil. Yet Elias's instincts screamed. They walked another mile inward. The trees began forming a natural ring. Circular. Intentional in appearance. At the center of the ring stood one tree larger than the rest. Its bark was nearly black. Its branches stretched wide like skeletal arms. The ground around it was clear of brush. Elias stopped at the edge of the circle. His heart pounded heavily. Dr. Kessler whispered that this could be the origin node. Dalton asked what that meant. She explained that root density readings spiked dramatically here. Not outward. Downward. Deeper than anywhere else. Harris scanned the perimeter nervously. Nothing moved above. No pale limbs. No creatures clinging in branches. Just stillness. Elias stepped forward alone. The soil near the central tree felt unnaturally cool. He knelt slowly, placed his palm flat against the earth. For a long moment there was nothing. Then faintly, a pulse. Not spreading outward. Not traveling. Steady. Contained. Like a heartbeat buried miles below. He looked up at the massive trunk. Its bark bore deep vertical fissures. Dark resin seeped slowly from within. Dr. Kessler approached cautiously with a probe. She inserted it near the roots. The monitor flickered. Readings spiked sharply. Dalton asked if it was active. She nodded once. But isolated. Not networked. Elias understood. The detonations had severed long-distance coordination. But this core remained intact. Dormant, perhaps. Recovering. He stood slowly. The forest around them seemed to lean inward slightly. Not physically. Psychologically. Harris whispered that he did not like this place. Elias felt something shift in the air. A subtle vibration not through ground. Through soundless pressure. Dr. Kessler stepped back abruptly. The resin on the bark began to move. Not drip. Move. Sliding upward against gravity. Dalton raised his rifle. Elias held out a hand to stop him. The fissures in the bark widened slowly. A hollow space within the trunk became visible. Dark and deep. The pulse grew stronger beneath Elias's boots. Then a voice emerged. Not layered. Not distorted. Clear. It spoke calmly. It addressed Elias by name. Dalton stiffened beside him. The voice did not come from branches. It came from the tree itself. Elias forced himself to remain still. He asked what it wanted. The voice answered without hesitation. It said it wanted continuity. Dalton whispered that trees did not talk. Elias ignored him. He asked if it was the beginning. The voice said it was memory. It explained nothing further. The pulse intensified again. The soil beneath them trembled lightly. Not violently. Measured. Elias realized something crucial. This was not an animal intelligence. Not even a colony mind. It was accumulation. Generations of absorbed memory. Every creature taken into nests. Every voice mimicked. Stored here. Compressed into root and ring. Dr. Kessler whispered that the cellular structure suggested long-term integration. Dalton asked if killing this tree would end it. The voice answered before Elias could. It said destruction would scatter it. Harris tightened his grip on his rifle. Elias stepped closer to the trunk. He asked what it intended next. The voice paused briefly. It said adaptation. Expansion had failed loudly. Now it would move quietly. Through rivers. Through soil. Through forgotten places. Elias felt anger rise again. He asked why humans were taken. The voice responded simply. Observation. Learning required proximity. Elias clenched his fists. He realized it did not see them as prey, nor as enemies, but as data. Dalton asked if negotiation was possible. The voice did not answer that question. Instead, the fissures in the bark widened further. Within the hollow shape, something shifted. Not a creature, a mass. Fibrous and dark, pulsing slowly. Elias understood fully then. The nests had been extensions. The creatures had been limbs. But this was the brain. Buried in wood older than town records. He looked at Dalton carefully. If they burned it, it would scatter underground. If they blasted it, fragments would spread through soil and water. They needed precision. Dr. Kessler spoke quietly. She said if they could isolate the core structure chemically, not violently, they might neutralize cellular activity without fragmentation. Dalton asked if that was possible. She said with the right compounds. Perhaps. The voice spoke again. It said containment would delay but not erase. It had centuries of growth behind it. Time was its ally. Elias stepped even closer to the trunk. He felt heat now from within the hollow. Not fire. Metabolic warmth. He realized this forest was not haunted. It was inhabited by something that had always been here, waiting for expansion opportunities. He asked one final question. Why Ashford? The voice answered simply. Proximity. The town had grown near its oldest roots. It had not invaded humanity. Humanity had built beside it. Silence followed that statement. Elias felt the weight of truth there. Dalton lowered his rifle slowly. Harris looked between them in confusion. Dr. Kessler said softly that coexistence might be possible, if boundaries were respected, if expansion ceased. The voice did not contradict her. It pulsed once beneath their feet. Steady. Contained. Elias understood the choice before them. Destroy and risk scattering it everywhere, or contain and monitor indefinitely. He met Dalton's eyes. This was no longer a battle. It was a decision about territory, about limits, about who yielded ground. The forest waited, not aggressively, patiently, for their answer. No one spoke for several long seconds. The old tree stood motionless before them. The fissures in its bark remained slightly open. Dark resin hovered along the edges without falling. The hollow within pulsed faintly. Elias felt Dalton's eyes on him. Harris shifted uneasily behind them. Dr. Kessler watched the monitor in her hand. The readings were stable, contained. The pulse did not spread outward. It remained centered beneath the ancient trunk. Elias finally broke the silence. He asked what coexistence required. The voice answered calmly. Distance. No further cutting into the old growth. No mining beneath the northern ridge. No expansion of roads toward the river headwaters. Dalton let out a slow breath. That land had never been heavily developed anyway. But formalizing its protection would change things. Elias asked what would happen if those terms were broken. The pulse strengthened slightly. The voice said adaptation would resume. Not in anger. In response. Harris muttered that it sounded like a threat. The voice replied that it was simply cause and effect. Dr. Kessler spoke carefully. She asked whether the taking of humans would cease. The tree was silent for a long moment. Then it answered. Observation was no longer necessary. Enough had been learned. Elias felt something twist in his chest. He thought of his father, of Evan and Sophie, of Caleb. He asked what had become of them. The pulse slowed. The voice said their forms had been integrated, their memory preserved. Not alive. Not suffering. Stored. Grief hit him in a quiet wave. He had suspected as much. But hearing it confirmed hollowed something inside him. Dalton stepped closer. He asked if those memories could be released. The voice did not answer directly. Instead, the hollow in the trunk shifted. For a brief second, Elias heard something. A whisper that sounded like wind through leaves. But within it he recognized a tone. His father's laugh. Faint. Distant. Not trapped. Not pleading. Just an echo. The fissures in the bark slowly began to close. The resin resumed a natural downward drip. The pulse steadied further. Dr. Kessler looked at Elias carefully. She said if they marked this region as protected land permanently, they could monitor soil and water without disturbing the core. Dalton nodded slowly. A conservation boundary. Legally enforced. No development. No intrusion. Harris still looked unconvinced. He asked what guarantee they had. The forest gave none. Only quiet. Elias stepped back from the trunk. He felt the weight of generations pressing behind him. Ashford had nearly been erased because expansion crossed an unseen line. The detonations had forced retreat. But this place had not retaliated. It had defended. He finally spoke clearly. Ashford would establish a permanent boundary at the northern ridge. The old growth would become protected land. No logging. No mining. No river diversion. In return, the network would remain contained. Silent. Rooted. The pulse beneath their feet responded once. Firm. Measured. Agreement without ceremony. Dalton exhaled slowly. Harris lowered his rifle at last. Dr. Kessler recorded the soil readings one final time. The hollow in the trunk sealed fully. The bark looked like ordinary bark again. Only Elias could still sense the depth beneath it. They began the long hike back over the ridge. The forest behind them did not stir. No limbs moved in branches. No hum vibrated in their bones. Yet Elias knew it was aware of their departure. Not watching with hunger, watching with memory. When they reached Ashford that evening, Dalton immediately contacted state officials. Emergency zoning laws were drafted within days. The northern old growth was declared protected wilderness. Federal oversight followed quickly after the reports were reviewed. Mining claims were revoked. Future road surveys were halted. The boundary line was drawn carefully along the ridge. Months passed. No further tremors registered on sensors. River readings remained stable. Dead trees along the eastern edge were removed and replaced with young saplings. None showed signs of dark resin. The crater at the mill was paved into a small memorial park. Names of the lost were engraved in stone. Elias attended the dedication quietly. He did not speak publicly. At night he still climbed the watchtower. Out of habit, out of promise. He listened to wind moving naturally through leaves. Sometimes he thought he felt something faint. Not a hum. More like a distant awareness. But it did not move toward town. It did not reach beneath soil. It remained north of the ridge. One late autumn evening, nearly a year after the detonations, Elias stood at the tower railing alone. The sky was clear. Stars scattered brightly above the canopy. He closed his eyes briefly. The forest felt vast, ancient, occupied, but not hostile. A soft breeze drifted from the north. For an instant it carried a whisper. Not layered, not mechanical, just wind shaping syllables by chance. Yet he recognized a familiar tone within it. A calm, steady warmth. He did not answer. He did not need to. Below him Ashford's lights glowed peacefully. Children laughed somewhere in the distance. A truck rolled down Main Street. Ordinary life continued. Beyond the ridge the old growth stood untouched. Roots ran deep beneath ancient soil. Memory rested within wood older than town history. The boundary held. Elias Blackwood remained at his post long after midnight. Watching. Listening. Not for invasion, but for imbalance. Because the forest was not evil. It was not merciful either. It simply endured. And as long as both town and forest respected the line between them, the silence would remain what it had become. Not the silence of something hunting, but the silence of something waiting peacefully in its own domain. For now. Winter came early that year. Snow fell thick over Ashford and softened every hard edge the fires had left behind. The burned ridge turned white. The memorial park at the old mill stood quiet beneath frost. Children threw snowballs where a crater had once opened into darkness. Life had not just returned. It had insisted on staying. Elias still climbed the watchtower, even in snow, even when the stairs iced over and the wind cut through his coat. He told Dalton it was routine. Dalton no longer questioned it. Some habits were not meant to fade. The northern boundary held. Survey stakes marked the ridge clearly. Signs warned against trespassing into protected old growth. Most residents respected the restriction. A few grumbled. But no one crossed it casually. For months there was nothing. No tremor. No dead trees. No whispers through wires. The seismic monitors stayed flat. The river flowed cold and clear. Silence became normal again. And that was what finally unsettled Elias. One evening in late February, he climbed the tower after sunset. The air was sharp and clean. The sky stretched cloudless above him. The snow in the canopy reflected moonlight like pale glass. He leaned against the railing and listened. Nothing. Not even the faint awareness he had grown used to sensing north of the ridge. It felt different. Not calm. Absent. He frowned slightly and closed his eyes. He focused on the earth beneath layers of snow and frozen soil. He waited for the steady contained pulse that had once rested under the old tree. There was none. A slow, cold realization spread through him. He climbed down quickly and drove toward the northern ridge alone. He did not call Dalton. He did not wake Harris. Instinct told him this was not an emergency of violence. It was something quieter. Snow crunched under his boots as he crossed the boundary line on foot. The old growth stood motionless under white weight. Massive trunks rose like pillars in a frozen cathedral. He moved straight toward the ring of trees, toward the ancient black-barked trunk at the center. The circle was intact, the ground undisturbed, snow layered evenly across the clearing. He approached slowly. The great tree stood before him, its fissured bark dark against snow. But something was wrong. The resin stains were gone. The deep vertical cracks had sealed completely. The bark looked older, drier. He stepped forward and pressed his palm against the trunk. Cold. Not living cold. Dead cold. He waited. Nothing answered him. No pulse. No buried heartbeat. No contained awareness. The tree had died. Not burned. Not blasted. Simply ceased. Elias stepped back slowly. His breath fogged in front of him. A heavy creak echoed somewhere high above. He looked up sharply. The upper branches of the great tree sagged under snow. With a long splitting groan, one massive limb cracked and fell. It struck the ground beside him in an explosion of white powder. The sound echoed through the old growth. Then silence again. Elias understood then. The detonations had not only fractured the network, they had isolated the core. Cut off from extensions, starved of collected resonance. It had endured as long as it could. Then it had ended itself. Not scattered, not retreated, stopped. The ancient trunk stood hollow now in the truest sense. He exhaled slowly. For the first time since this began, he felt no tension in his bones. No distant listening presence. Just forest. Old, ordinary forest. Wind moved naturally through branches. Snow slipped from limbs in soft cascading falls. Elias remained there for a long while, paying respect in his own way. Because whatever the network had been, it had not acted from cruelty. It had acted from instinct, from expansion and preservation. And in the end, it had chosen containment over war. He returned to town before dawn. He told Dalton everything. They hiked back together the next day to confirm. The tree was still dead. No vibration stirred beneath soil. No abnormal readings spiked on Dr. Kessler's instruments. Spring came slowly after that. The old growth remained untouched, now not out of fear but reverence. Ashford thrived quietly at the forest's edge. The boundary became less a line of defense and more a line of respect. Years passed. Children grew up knowing the story of the winter when the forest moved. They were taught not to mock it, not to fear it, but to understand it. Elias aged into gray. His beard silvered. His hands stiffened in cold weather. He never stopped climbing the watchtower. One final autumn evening, long after the fires and detonations had faded into memory, he stood at the railing watching leaves turn gold. The forest looked vast and peaceful. Truly peaceful. He closed his eyes one last time and listened. No hum. No pulse. No buried heartbeat. Only wind. He smiled faintly. The line held. Below him Ashford glowed warm in twilight. Beyond the ridge the old growth stood tall and silent, no longer waiting, no longer learning. Just existing. And Ranger Elias Blackwood finally allowed himself to step down from the tower knowing that the forest and the town had both chosen to live together. The forest did not appear haunted. That was the first thing Nathan Crowley noticed. After 15 years in the National Park Service, he had learned that places with true darkness rarely advertised it. No crooked trees. No permanent fog. No obvious signs of dread. Just stillness, the kind that pressed against your eardrums when birds refused to sing. Black Hollow Preserve looked ordinary. Tall redwoods stretched upward like cathedral pillars. The earth was layered in damp pine needles. Moss wrapped fallen logs in soft green velvet. Sunlight filtered through the canopy in fractured gold beams. It was beautiful and completely silent. Nathan parked his government-issued truck at the ranger station, a squat cedar building perched at the edge of the preserve. The previous ranger had retired suddenly 2 months ago. No forwarding address. No retirement party. Just a signed transfer and a locked office. The regional supervisor hadn't given details. Low incident area, she'd said. You'll enjoy the quiet. Nathan stepped out of the truck and shut the door. The slam echoed too long. He scanned the tree line. No wind. No insects. No movement. Even in deep forest, there was always something. A squirrel darting, leaves rustling, distant bird calls. Here, there was nothing but the faint creak of trees shifting under their own weight. He didn't like that. Inside the ranger station, the air smelled old, not rotten, not moldy, just stale. A thin layer of dust coated the front desk. The corkboard behind it still displayed outdated trail maps and missing dog posters. Nathan dropped his duffel and walked into the back office. The desk drawer was open. Not broken. Not forced. Just open. Inside lay a park-issued radio, unplugged. The battery had been removed. Beside it sat a leather-bound notebook. No label. No name. He picked it up. The pages were filled with cramped handwriting. Not official reports. Personal entries. He flipped to the last page. June 14th. It started calling from the West Trail again. It uses the river now. I don't answer. I won't answer. The entry ended there. Nathan's jaw tightened. He flipped back several pages. May 2nd. I found tracks. Barefoot. Deep heel. No toe spread. It walks wrong. Another entry. May 19th. The hikers say they heard singing near Raven's Bend. There are no cabins there. There hasn't been for decades. Nathan closed the notebook slowly. This wasn't standard ranger paranoia. This was someone unraveling. He placed the notebook back in the drawer. Then paused. Something tapped against the back window. Soft. Deliberate. Nathan turned. The window looked out onto a narrow stretch of trees behind the station. Nothing moved. He walked closer. Pressed his palm against the glass. Cold. Too cold for late September. The tapping came again. From farther away. Deeper in the woods. 3 slow knocks against wood. Knock. 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 Then silence. Nathan stepped outside immediately. The forest air hit him sharp and metallic. He followed the sound's direction toward a narrow dirt trail leading west. A wooden trail sign stood at its entrance. West Ridge Loop. 6.2 miles. The sign had been scratched. Not vandalized. Carved. 3 vertical lines cut deep into the wood. Knock. 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 Nathan crouched. The ground was soft enough to hold prints. And there they were. Bare footprints. Large. Human-shaped. But wrong. The heel pressed deep. The toes barely touched the soil. As if whatever walked there leaned backward unnaturally. His stomach tightened. He'd seen odd tracks before. Bears, mountain lions, hikers without boots. But this pattern carried weight in the wrong places. He followed them 3 steps into the trail before stopping. Training told him not to go alone without logging his route. Instinct told him something else. The forest had grown quieter. Even the faint wind had died. Then, a voice. Soft. Behind him. Ranger. Nathan froze. The voice sounded male. Mid-30s. Close. He turned slowly. No one stood there. The ranger station sat 30 yards behind him. Empty. The voice came again. From the West Trail. Ranger Crowley. He did not remember introducing himself. His name had not yet been logged in the station records. He hadn't even updated the exterior sign. Yet the voice knew him. His pulse quickened, but his training held steady. "Show yourself," he called calmly. Silence. Then, faintly, laughter. Not mocking, not loud, almost curious. It drifted between trees, impossible to locate. Nathan stepped backward toward the station. The moment his boot crossed from trail dirt back onto gravel, the air shifted. Birds erupted into noise overhead. Wind returned. Leaves rustled. The forest resumed breathing. Nathan stared at the west trail. Nothing stood there. No figure. No movement. Just the carved sign and the strange footprints. He exhaled slowly. Then he saw something new. The footprints were gone. The dirt was smooth, undisturbed. He stepped forward and knelt. No impressions. No heel marks. No toe prints. As if the earth had reset itself. A thin chill ran down his spine. He stood and looked toward the tree line once more. And in the far distance, just for a second, he saw a shape. Tall, Phil, standing between two trees, watching him. Its outline blurred slightly, as though heat shimmered around it. It did not move. It did not step forward. It simply existed. Then a branch swayed in the breeze, and it was gone. Nathan did not run. He did not shout. He walked calmly back into the ranger station, closed the door, locked it, and pulled the leather notebook from the desk drawer again. He flipped to the first entry. April 3rd, it doesn't like new rangers. Nathan stared at the words. Outside, somewhere beyond the west trail, something knocked 3 times against wood again. Slow, patient, waiting. Nathan did not sleep that night. He told himself it was adjustment. New posting, new forest, new sounds. But that wasn't true. There had been no sounds. That was the problem. He lay on the narrow cot in the ranger station's back room, staring at the ceiling while the dark pressed heavy against the windows. Every forest had a night rhythm: owls, insects, distant branches cracking. Black Hollow had nothing. Around 2:17 a.m., the temperature dropped sharply. He didn't check a thermometer. He felt it. The air turned thin and metallic again, the same way it had before the tapping at the window. Nathan sat up slowly. 3 knocks echoed faintly in the distance. Knock, knock, knock. Not on the station. Farther away. From the west. He stood, grabbed his flashlight, and stepped outside without turning on the overhead lights. If something was out there, he didn't want to silhouette himself. The forest was silver under moonlight. And silent. He followed the west trail entrance with careful steps. The carved sign stood still. The scratches were gone. The wood looked untouched. Nathan ran his fingers over the surface. Smooth. No grooves. No marks. His pulse ticked up. He crouched again where the footprints had been earlier. The dirt was undisturbed, as if the forest had decided to erase its own evidence. The 3 knocks came again. Closer this time, but not from a tree. From farther down the trail. He followed. Training said log the route first, but instinct told him this was time-sensitive. After 200 yards, the forest changed. The trees grew tighter together. The air grew colder. His flashlight beam seemed swallowed rather than reflected. Then he heard something new. Water. A slow river current. Raven's Bend. He remembered the journal entry. The hikers say they heard singing near Raven's Bend. There are no cabins there. There hasn't been for decades. The river curved sharply at the bend, creating a shallow gravel bank. Nathan stepped into the clearing and stopped. There was a cabin. Not new. Not intact. But real. Half collapsed. Rotting wood. Broken windows. The roof sagged inward. It stood 20 yards from the riverbank. The maps in the ranger station showed no structure here. He was certain. He approached slowly. No lights. No smoke. No footprints in the soft river mud. Yet the air around the cabin felt inhabited. His flashlight swept across the door. 3 vertical scratches. Fresh. He swallowed. The front door hung crookedly on rusted hinges. He pushed it open gently. The hinges did not creak. Inside, dust floated thick in the beam of his light. Furniture remained. A table, 2 chairs, an old iron stove, and something on the wall. Nathan stepped closer. Photographs. Dozens. Pinned and nailed across the entire back wall. All black and white. All of the forest. Trees. River. Trails. Every location in Black Hollow. In each photograph, there was a shape. Tall. Blurred. Standing between trees. Sometimes near the river. Sometimes at trailheads. Always distant. Always watching. Nathan's chest tightened. These weren't old pioneer photos. They were modern. Recent. One photograph caught his eye. It was dated in pen at the bottom. May 27th. The year matched the previous ranger's journal. The picture showed the ranger station, taken from the West Trail. In the station doorway, Nathan stood, unpacking his truck. This afternoon. He stared at the date again. It was written months ago. The air inside the cabin shifted. Cold flooded in from nowhere. The door behind him slammed shut. Hard. Nathan spun. The cabin plunged into darkness. His flashlight flickered once, twice, then died. He stood still. Complete blackness. Then, breathing. Not his. Slow. Measured. Behind him, Ranger Crowley. The voice was clearer now. Less distant. Less curious. Almost pleased. Nathan did not turn immediately. He forced his voice steady. You've been watching. A pause. Yes. The word came softly. The cabin walls creaked. Not from wind. From pressure. As if something leaned against them from the outside. How do you know my name? Silence. Then, you walk where he walked. The floorboards groaned beneath Nathan's boots. He. Nathan asked. The one before you. Cold brushed across the back of his neck. Where is he? The voice did not answer directly. Instead, the photographs began to shift. He could not see them, but he heard papers sliding against wood. Dozens. Hundreds. A faint tearing sound. Nathan turned slowly. A dim gray light now filled the cabin. Not moonlight. Something else. The photographs were changing. Each image now showed the tall shape closer. Nearer. Stepping forward frame by frame. In the most recent image, it stood directly behind the previous ranger. A man Nathan had only seen in a personnel file. The ranger's face was turned toward the camera. Eyes wide. Mouth open. Behind him, the shape leaned down. Its outline elongated. Its posture wrong. Its face, where its face should be, was empty. Just distortion. The air grew heavier. You answer when called, the voice whispered. Nathan felt something cold touch his shoulder. He swung blindly. His fist passed through air. But the cold remained. You came. The cabin walls bulged inward slightly. The breathing grew louder. All around him. You came. Nathan forced himself to think. It used the river now. That's what the journal said. It used the river. The knocking. 3 times. He stepped backward until his hand touched the wall. The photographs trembled. You don't belong here, Nathan said firmly. Silence. Then the cabin temperature dropped violently. Frost formed along the inside of the windows. The breathing multiplied. Not one. Many. You walk the West Trail. The floor beneath him shifted. Softened. As if turning to mud. You hear the river. The gray light brightened slightly. The shape began forming in the corner of the cabin. Not stepping in. Assembling. Shadow layering over shadow. I will not answer you, Nathan said. The breathing stopped. Total silence. Then, 3 knocks. From inside the cabin, behind him. Knock, knock, knock. The shape completed itself. Tall, too tall. Its arms hung too long at its sides. Its posture leaned backward unnaturally. Its head tilted. Its outline shimmered. You already have. The cabin door burst open. Moonlight flooded in. The shape recoiled sharply, its outline tearing apart like smoke in wind. Nathan lunged toward the doorway and stumbled out onto the riverbank gravel. He hit hard and rolled. The air outside felt normal again, cold but breathable. The cabin behind him stood still, quiet, empty. No gray light, no movement. Nathan scrambled to his feet and shone his flashlight back inside. It worked again. The cabin was bare. No photographs, no furniture, no stove. Just rotted beams and fallen debris, as if abandoned for decades. He stood there breathing hard. Then he noticed something new. Footprints in the gravel, not his, leading from the river into the cabin. There. Deep heel, no toe spread, and beside them, another set. But the direction was reversed. His prints led from the cabin, toward the river. Nathan stared at the river's dark surface. It moved slowly, quietly, and just beneath the water, something tall stood motionless, watching him from below. Nathan did not look into the river again. He forced himself to step back. Slowly, deliberately. The shape beneath the water did not move. It did not ripple the surface. It stood upright, too tall for the shallow depth, its outline bending unnaturally with the current. Watching, waiting. Nathan's training screamed at him to retreat. He listened. He turned and walked, not ran, back toward the trail. The moment he stepped beyond the gravel bank, the air changed. The metallic cold faded. Insects resumed faintly. Wind brushed through branches. The forest exhaled. He did not stop walking until the ranger station came into view. Only then did he allow himself to look back. The west trail was empty. No cabin visible from this angle. No gray light. No sign of disturbance. Inside the station, he locked the door and turned on every light. He pulled the previous ranger's journal from the desk again. He flipped rapidly through entries, looking for anything about Raven's Bend. May 22nd. The cabin isn't always there. It appears when it wants to be seen. If you step inside, it steps inside you. Nathan frowned. He read the next entry. May 27th. I answered it once. I didn't realize I had. It doesn't need words. His jaw tightened. He replayed the moment in the cabin. You've been watching. Yes. You came. You already have. The voice had claimed he answered. But how? He hadn't said yes. He hadn't agreed to anything. Then a memory shifted in his mind. Earlier. At the trailhead. Show yourself. He had invited it. The knocks. 3 times. He had followed. He had stepped inside the cabin willingly. His stomach turned. The journal slipped from his fingers onto the desk. A slow scraping sound drifted across the back wall of the station. 3 soft drags, like nails along wood. Nathan did not move. The scraping continued, slow, measured, across the outside wall, from west to east, then stopped at the back window. Knock, knock, knock. He stepped toward the window cautiously. The glass had frosted over from the outside. Impossible. The temperature was above freezing. The frost thickened, spreading outward in delicate white veins. Then, from the center of the frost, a handprint formed, pressed from the outside. Long fingers, deep palm, no toe spread. He didn't know why that thought came to him, but it did. The handprint remained, then slowly slid downward, as if something tall stood there, leaning against the glass. Nathan drew his sidearm quietly. The scraping resumed, now along the side of the building, circling. It was not trying to break in. It was pacing. The frost receded slowly. The handprint vanished. Silence returned. Nathan exhaled carefully. He moved toward the radio. The battery he had placed back inside earlier was gone. He stared at the empty compartment. He was certain he had reinserted it. Certain. His pulse climbed. The desk drawer creaked open behind him. He spun. The leather journal lay open. A new line written across the bottom of the last page. Fresh ink. June 15th. He answers quickly. Nathan felt his throat tighten. He stepped back from the desk. The overhead lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then steadied. He grabbed the journal and flipped to the first page again. The previous ranger's name was written inside the cover. Ranger Eli Mercer. Nathan whispered it. Mercer. The air shifted immediately. The station lights dimmed slightly. The temperature dropped. He had said the name. Acknowledged the one before him. The voice returned. Closer than ever. Right behind him. You walk where he walked. Nathan did not turn. He had learned something. It reacted to acknowledgement, to invitation, to recognition. He remained silent. The voice continued. He listened. Nathan swallowed but kept quiet. He answered. The station floor creaked. A shadow stretched across the wall opposite him, not cast by anything visible. Long leaning backward, head tilted. He kept his eyes forward. The shadow moved closer. You are learning. Nathan clenched his jaw. It fed on response, on awareness, on recognition. He shut his eyes, focused on breathing. Inhale, exhale. The shadow stopped inches from his boots. You cannot unhear. The words vibrated in the air rather than echoing. You cannot unsee. Nathan said nothing. The shadow trembled slightly, as if agitated. You came to the river. Silence. You saw. Silence. The pressure in the room intensified. The lights flickered harder. The temperature plummeted. Frost began forming along the floorboards. Nathan forced himself to remain still. You answer when you follow. The voice sharpened slightly. You answer when you look. A pause. You answer when you remember. The room darkened further. Nathan's breath fogged in the air. The shadow bent lower, as if trying to force him to look down. He understood now. It needed engagement, needed him to react, to confirm it, to validate it. He opened his eyes slowly, but not at the shadow. He looked straight at the wall, unmoving, unresponsive. You are not the first, the voice whispered. The shadow withdrew slightly. You are not the last. The words lingered. The frost on the floor began to melt. The lights steadied. The temperature rose gradually. The pressure lifted. The shadow dissolved into the dim lighting. Nathan remained frozen for several more seconds. Then, 3 knocks. Not on the station. From deep in the forest. West. But farther. As if retreating. He walked to the window. The glass was clear. No frost. No handprint. The forest looked normal. Night creatures resumed their distant calls. Wind stirred gently. He looked down at the journal in his hand. The fresh ink line remained. He flipped back several pages. One final entry from Mercer stood out. If you stop answering, it changes tactics. Nathan stared at that line for a long time. Then he understood something worse. The thing in Black Hollow did not want to be seen. It wanted to be acknowledged. The previous ranger had unraveled because he engaged it, documented it, followed it, spoke to it. Nathan placed the journal back in the drawer and closed it firmly. From this moment forward, he would not answer. He would not follow. He would not look for the cabin. He would not speak its words. Outside, the west trail darkened slightly, as if the trees leaned closer together. And somewhere beyond Raven's Bend, the river shifted. Ignoring it did not make it weaker. It made it patient. For 3 days, Nathan followed routine with deliberate precision. Morning trail inspections, radio check-ins with regional dispatch, water level monitoring at Raven's Bend, trailhead logbook updates. He did not walk the West Trail. He did not speak Mercer's name. He did not acknowledge the knocks when they came faintly at night. And they did come. Always 3. Never closer than the tree line. Never at the door. 3 slow impacts against wood somewhere deep in the forest. Knock, knock, knock. Then silence. The forest remained normal during daylight hours. Birds returned. Squirrels moved. Wind behaved like wind. It almost felt like the thing retreated when observed. But on the 4th night, something changed. Nathan woke at exactly 3:03 a.m. He didn't know why. No sound. No knock. Just the sensation of being watched. He remained still on the cot. The ranger station was dark. He had left the lights off intentionally now. He did not want reflections. His breathing slowed. Then he noticed it. The window above the sink. It wasn't frosted. It wasn't marked. It was open. 2 inches. Nathan sat up slowly. He was certain he had latched it. The night air drifting in was colder than the outside temperature should allow. And it carried a scent. River water. Metallic. Damp. Raven's Bend. He rose quietly and stepped toward the window. Outside, the forest looked calm. Still. Moonlight stretched across tree trunks. He leaned closer to shut the window. And stopped. Something stood beyond the clearing. Not near the trail. Not near the trees. Closer. Halfway between the West Trail and the station. Tall. Motionless. He did not focus on its face. He had learned that much. But he saw enough. Its posture leaned backward unnaturally. Its arms hung too long at its sides. Its head tilted slightly. Studying him. He did not react. He reached up and closed the window. Locked it. The latch clicked softly. The moment the metal met metal, the thing was gone. No blur. No smoke. No fade. Simply absent. Nathan stepped back. His heart pounded once, hard. Then steadied. It wanted reaction. It wanted invitation. So it changed tactics. The next morning, the trail logbook had been updated. Nathan stared at it in disbelief. The previous evening's entries were still there. But below them, a new name. Written in neat handwriting. N. Crowley, West Ridge Loop, 2:13 a.m. He felt the blood drain from his face. He had not left the station. He knew that. But the logbook said otherwise. The timestamp matched exactly 10 minutes after he had woken. He turned the page. More entries. N. Crowley, Raven's Bend, 2:29 a.m. N. Crowley, Cabin, 2:41 a.m. His pulse roared in his ears. The ink was fresh. Still slightly glossy. He had been asleep. He was certain. He walked outside and scanned the gravel. No footprints. He checked the West Trail entrance. The dirt was smooth. Then he looked down at his boots. Mud clung to the soles. Dark, wet, river mud. Nathan staggered back 1 step. He remembered nothing. Nothing between waking at 3:03 and sunrise. The thing had stopped asking him to follow. It had stopped asking him to answer. Now, it was writing him into the trail. That night he prepared differently. He tied a thin cord around his wrist and secured the other end to the cot frame. If he moved more than a foot, it would wake him. He placed flour across the doorway, across the window sill, across the office floor. Simple tracking method. Basic. Reliable. He lay down. He did not sleep easily. At 2:59 a.m., the knocking began. Not from the forest. From inside the walls. Knock, knock, knock. From the wooden beams themselves. The cord around his wrist remained slack. He did not move. The knocking shifted location. From the walls to the floor beneath his cot. Knock, knock, knock. His pulse pounded. He kept his eyes shut. Did not respond. The cord twitched slightly. Just once. Then stilled. The knocking stopped. Silence filled the station. He counted slowly in his head. 1, 2, 3. At 20, he opened his eyes. The cord was still tied. The flower remained undisturbed. He exhaled carefully, then noticed something else. The ceiling, directly above him. 3 faint impressions pressed into the wood, as if something had stood on the roof, directly over his bed. He did not move for a long time. Morning came reluctantly. Nathan checked the flower first. No footprints. No disturbance. Then he checked the logbook. A new entry. N. Crowley, station roof, 3:01 a.m. His breath caught. He had not moved. The cord was still tied. The flower was undisturbed. But the logbook said otherwise. He walked slowly outside. Looked up. The station roof was damp with dew, except for 3 elongated impressions. Heel heavy, toes faint, pressed deep into the wood, facing downward, as if something had stood above him, watching, not trying to lure him, not trying to frighten him, learning him, mirroring him. The realization struck hard. It was no longer trying to get him to follow. It was replacing him. He returned inside, opened the journal again, flipped to Mercer's last legible entry. If it writes you into the trail, you are already halfway gone. Nathan closed the journal slowly. Outside, wind picked up suddenly. Strong. Unnatural. The West Trail sign snapped sharply against its post. 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. He looked out the window, and for the first time, the shape did not stand between trees. It stood at the trailhead, on the gravel, where he had stood on his first day, facing the station, and its outline looked almost exactly like his. Nathan did not sleep that night, not because he was afraid, because he was thinking. The entity had stopped luring him, stopped knocking from the forest, stopped trying to make him follow. Now it was writing him into places he hadn't been, replacing him in record, mirroring him in form. If it could duplicate his trail entries, if it could place mud on his boots, if it could stand at the trailhead wearing his outline, then the next step was obvious. It would try to become him. Morning came with thick gray fog pressing low over Black Hollow. Nathan stepped outside and immediately noticed something wrong. The fog wasn't drifting. It was still, like a wall. The ranger station radio crackled suddenly from inside. He froze. He had removed the battery again before bed. The radio crackled a second time. Then a voice clear calm. His voice dispatch, "This is Ranger Crowley. West Ridge is clear." Nathan's blood ran cold. He moved slowly back inside. The radio sat on the desk. Battery compartment empty. Cord unplugged. Yet his voice continued. Routine patrol complete. No incidents to report. The transmission ended with a soft click. Silence. Nathan stepped toward the radio and stared at it. Then the desk phone rang. Once. Sharp. He picked it up carefully. Black Hollow Ranger Station. Static answered. Then his own voice. "Where are you?" Nathan's grip tightened. The voice sounded slightly off. A half-second delayed echo beneath it. "Who is this?" A pause. Then, "You're late." The line went dead. He stood motionless. The thing was no longer confined to the West Trail. It had entered the station. The office door creaked softly behind him. He turned. The door was open. He did not remember opening it. Outside, through the fog, he saw someone standing near the truck, wearing Ranger green. Same build, same height, same stance. Nathan stepped onto the porch slowly. The figure stood with its back to him, hands resting at its sides, boots identical to his name patch visible on the jacket. Crowley. Nathan's pulse thundered in his ears. Turn around. The figure's head tilted slightly. Then very slowly it turned. Its face was his, but not right. The features were stretched subtly, eyes slightly too far apart, smile slightly too wide, skin faintly desaturated, as if copied from memory. It blinked once, out of sync. You left the West Trail unattended. Nathan's voice, perfect pitch, perfect tone, but hollow. You shouldn't do that. The fog thickened around them. Nathan did not draw his weapon. He knew bullets would do nothing. What do you want? The double's smile widened slightly. To remain. The air grew colder. You are temporary. Nathan felt the ground shift slightly beneath his boots. The double took one step forward. Its movement lagged for a fraction of a second, like a poorly rendered reflection catching up. I walk your patrol. Another step. I answer your radio. Another. I sign your name. Nathan held his ground. The double stopped 3 feet away. Up close, the imperfections were clearer. Skin too smooth. Blink slightly delayed. Breathing wrong. Too even. You see, it continued softly, I have learned. The fog pressed closer, silencing the forest again. Nathan made a decision. He stepped forward, not back. The double smile faltered for just a split second. You're missing something. The double tilted its head. Am I? Nathan leaned in slightly. Wait. Confusion flickered across the copied face. Wait. You don't carry it. The double blinked again. Out of sync. Nathan's expression hardened. You don't carry memory. For the first time the smile dropped. The fog pulsed outward sharply. The double's outline shimmered. I have memory, it said sharply. Nathan shook his head. You have Mercer's patrols. You have my radio calls. You have the trail. He stepped closer. But you don't have the cost. The air cracked with cold. The double's face twitched. Its jaw shifted slightly out of alignment before snapping back. I have what is required, it hissed. Nathan did not break eye contact. You don't know what it feels like to be afraid. The fog trembled. The double's breathing stuttered once. You don't know what it feels like to fail. Its skin rippled faintly. You don't know what it feels like to lose someone. The forest groaned softly behind them. The double's posture shifted. No longer steady. No longer certain. Its smile tried to return. But it looked strained now. Those are inefficiencies, it said quietly. Nathan shook his head slowly. They're what make me real. The fog thinned slightly. The double flickered, its outline distorting. You walk where he walked, it said again, but weaker now. Yes. And I carry what he carried. The double's face began to fracture subtly like glass under pressure. You cannot replace that. Silence fell heavy between them. Then 3 knocks came from behind the double. From the West Trail. The double turned its head sharply toward the sound. For the first time it looked uncertain. Nathan saw it clearly. It was not the source. It was an extension. The real presence remained in the forest. Testing. Learning. The double looked back at Nathan. Its face smoothed unnaturally. The smile returned wider than before. Then we will take it. The fog exploded outward in a violent surge. Nathan staggered back. When the air cleared, the porch was empty. No double. No fog wall. Just morning light filtering through trees. His truck sat undisturbed. The radio was silent. But from deep in the West Trail he heard it again. Knock. And this time it sounded amused. Nathan did not try to sleep after the journal went blank. He understood now. The thing in Black Hollow was not hunting his body. It was hunting continuity, memory, proof. If no record remained, if no one remembered, then replacement would not be required. Erasure would be enough. Morning arrived strangely muted. No birds. No wind. Just a flat gray sky pressing low over the treetops. Nathan stepped outside with deliberate calm. The ranger station sign stood where it always had. Black Hollow Preserve, Ranger Station. But something about it felt wrong. He walked closer. The paint looked newer, cleaner. The wood beneath less weathered, as if it had been replaced recently. He ran his hand across the carved lettering. Smooth. No splintering. No age. He turned slowly. The gravel around the station was pristine. No tire tracks from his truck. He looked toward the parking area. The truck was gone. His stomach dropped. He stood alone in the clearing. No vehicle. No sign of departure. No tracks in the gravel. The ranger station door creaked softly behind him. He spun. The building looked different. Subtle. The windows slightly repositioned. The porch railing unscuffed. The roof newer. His breath slowed. This was not destruction. It was revision. He stepped back inside. The desk was gone. The chair gone. The radio gone. In their place stood older furniture. Simpler. A style from decades ago. The air smelled different. Less dust. More pine resin. He walked slowly toward the back office. The drawer where the journal had been stored was missing entirely. The wall where Mercer's corkboard once hung was bare. Clean. As if no one had worked there in years. Nathan moved to the wall calendar. It displayed October. But not this year. The date read 1987. His pulse spiked. He reached for the calendar. The paper felt solid. Real. Not illusion. He walked quickly to the front door and stepped outside again. The forest felt heavier. Older. The trees appeared slightly thinner. Less growth in the underbrush. He looked toward the west trail. The sign now read, West Ridge Access, closed. The lettering was faded. Original. Untouched. He took one careful step toward it. And heard voices. Not from the forest. From behind him. Two men laughing inside the ranger station. Casual. Normal. Alive. Nathan turned slowly. Through the open doorway he saw them. Two rangers. Wearing older uniforms. Green slightly brighter. Patch design outdated. They stood by the desk that should not exist. Talking. One of them looked up. Their eyes met. Recognition flickered across the man's face. Not confusion. Recognition. Crowley, the man said. Nathan's breath caught. The name sounded wrong in the man's voice. As if spoken from memory rather than introduction. You're late for patrol, the ranger continued. Nathan stepped backward slowly. The forest behind him felt distant. Muted. He looked down at his hands. They seemed lighter, less defined at the edges. He clenched his fists. Solid. But something felt unstable. The ranger inside frowned slightly. You all right? He asked. The second ranger glanced toward the doorway. His face. Nathan recognized him instantly. Mercer. But younger. Not aged. Not worn down. Alive. Mercer tilted his head slightly. Have we met? He asked. Nathan felt a cold clarity settle over him. This was not the past. This was not time travel. This was assimilation. The station was rewriting, layering over him, replacing present with archived memory, and placing him within it. If he stepped inside, he would become part of that layer. A background detail. A name in a logbook from 1987. He stepped back again. The forest behind him flickered. For a split second, the trees looked charred, blackened. then normal again. The ranger inside took a step toward the doorway. "You coming in or not?" he asked casually. Nathan shook his head slowly. The ranger frowned deeper now. His outline blurred slightly. "You don't belong out there," the ranger said. Nathan understood the inversion. The entity had shifted the boundary. The forest was now stable. The station was unstable. Memory lived inside. Erasure lived outside. He stepped sideways off the porch. The world tilted violently. The laughter inside the station echoed strangely. The two rangers' forms began to distort. Mercer's face stretched. The other ranger's eyes shifted too far apart. Their smiles widened in unnatural synchronization. "You're resisting structure," they said together. Nathan's breath fogged. The air thickened. "You prefer absence." The porch railing splintered slightly under invisible pressure. The sign near the trail snapped once. Knock, knock, knock. The station walls bent inward subtly. "You prefer to be undefined." Nathan felt his balance falter. His boots sank slightly into gravel that felt suddenly soft, like river mud. "You are inefficient," the blended voice said again. The two rangers stepped forward in perfect mirrored movement. Their faces flickered between Mercer and Nathan, between 1987 and present, between solid and distorted. Nathan closed his eyes, not in surrender, in focus. He remembered the door. Darkness had density. Fog had density. Reflection had density. But clarity disrupted it. He opened his eyes and spoke clearly. "My name is Nathan Crowley." The station shuddered. The two figures froze. "I was assigned here this year." The porch railing cracked loudly. "I signed in." The calendar inside flipped violently through pages. "My truck was parked here." The gravel beneath his boots hardened instantly. The figures' faces fractured. "I am here." The words echoed sharply through the clearing. The station walls warped violently. The roof split down the center. The two rangers screamed, not in pain, in distortion. Their forms collapsed inward like paper burning without flame. The station imploded silently, wood folding into itself, windows bending like soft glass. Then, nothing. Nathan stood alone in the clearing. The ranger station restored to its original form. Weathered. Worn. His truck parked exactly where it had been. Tire tracks visible in gravel. The sign reading Black Hollow Preserve unchanged. He staggered forward slightly. The forest breathed again. Birds called faintly. Wind stirred. From the west trail, the faintest sound drifted outward. Not knocking. Not laughter. Breathing. Slow. Measured. But different. Uncertain. Nathan realized something critical. It could manipulate reflection. It could rewrite record. It could blur identity. But it struggled against declaration, against definition, against certainty. And now, it knew he understood that. The breathing faded, but did not disappear. The war had changed. Nathan did not celebrate the victory. He knew better. The forest had not gone silent. It had recalibrated. For 2 days Black Hollow remained stable. The ranger station held its proper shape. The truck remained in place. The logbook entries stayed intact. But something subtle had changed. The forest no longer pressed inward. It expanded outward. On the third morning hikers arrived. That had not happened in weeks. A couple in their late 20s walked up the gravel path, backpacks slung casually over their shoulders, smiling the way people smile when they expect a scenic walk and nothing more. Nathan stepped onto the porch as they approached. They greeted him casually and asked if he was the ranger. He confirmed. They told him they had heard the preserve reopened. The word struck him wrong. Reopened. They explained that a website listed the trails as fully accessible again. Under new management. Under his name. Nathan felt the air shift slightly around the clearing. There was no website, no reopening notice, no management change. He told them nothing had been posted. The woman pulled out her phone and showed him the page. It looked official. Professional layout, updated maps, trail descriptions. At the top it listed him as lead supervisor. Below that appeared a trail he had never seen before. Raven's Passage. Scenic river overlook. There was no Raven's Passage. The west trail ended at Raven's Bend. Nothing beyond it but river and dense forest. He checked the timestamp. Updated that morning. At a time when he had been standing outside. The forest behind the couple seemed calm. But the west trail entrance looked darker than usual. Not shadow, depth. The couple said they loved hidden trails. Nathan's jaw tightened. He told them firmly they could not go west. They hesitated, pointing to the page again. He cut them off. The wind shifted sharply. For a fraction of a second the man's face blurred. His eyes shifted slightly too far apart before snapping back. Nathan felt it instantly. The entity was no longer trying to erase him. It was trying to recruit. It had moved from imitation to propagation. It had found a new method of invitation. Through documentation. Through digital record. Through suggestion. He told the woman to turn off her phone immediately. She did. The moment the screen went black, the West Trail sign snapped violently against its post. 3 sharp impacts echoed through the clearing. The couple flinched. Nathan told them it was wood shifting, but he knew better. It was closer. Stronger. They decided to leave. Halfway across the gravel, the man stopped. He turned slowly toward the West Trail. His posture shifted. Heel heavy. Toes light. Nathan moved fast and grabbed his shoulder, turning him back. The man blinked rapidly, confused. He said he felt like someone was calling him. Calling. The word tightened Nathan's chest. 3 knocks echoed faintly from deep within the forest. The woman pulled her partner away and they hurried to their car. They drove off without looking back. Nathan stood alone again. But the silence felt altered. He approached the West Trail sign. It now read Raven's Passage open. The carved letters looked aged and permanent, as if they had always been there. He ran his fingers across them. Solid. Real. The forest behind the sign seemed to stretch unnaturally. The depth inviting. He understood the escalation. If he resisted internally, the entity would expand externally. Bring others in. Multiply witnesses until resistance diluted. It no longer needed to replace him. It could grow around him. The breathing returned. But this time it came from multiple directions. Layered. Not singular. The forest was branching. He turned toward the ranger station. The computer inside flickered to life. No switch touched. The screen glowed bright through the window. He stepped inside carefully. The homepage displayed visitor registration. A list scrolled downward automatically. Names. Dozens. Signed in. Registered arrival times for today, tomorrow, next week. The entity was building traffic. Building volume. If enough people walked west, definition would collapse. Memory would fragment. Witness would scatter. Nathan reached over and pulled the station's main breaker. The screen went black instantly. Silence followed. Outside, the West Trail sign trembled violently, then snapped clean off its post and fell into the dirt. The carved words split down the middle. The forest exhaled sharply. A sound like wind tearing through hollow wood. Nathan stepped back onto the porch. The unnatural depth beyond the trail receded slightly, but not fully. This was not containment. It was delay. The breathing remained, multiplying, learning faster now. It had moved beyond personal haunting. It wanted access. And Nathan understood something chilling. The forest was no longer testing him. It was testing how far its influence could travel. And it had discovered something powerful. People respond to invitation.